As storytellers, we believe in applying what we learn. So today we're going to demonstrate that for you. And today we're going to be taking our pseudo story, the story we came up with general plot points in our previous writing exercise, which has to do with cowardice and courage within a small military unit, and putting that through its paces to see what kind of conflict we can get out of that. So in the previous video, which I'm not going to make you go through the entire thing before you know what's going on here, just to kind of sum that up, we came up with a hero that was a coward who had some kind of positive military reputation, and we paired them with a overtly courageous commanding officer, who was very gung-ho and takes on a mission that was like nearly a suicide mission. And so our conflict grew out of this cowardly hero who was perceived as courageous, and putting them with someone who actually is courageous and having them go through a mission and having this coward try to escape with his life. End his military reputation. But I am going to switch that around. I'm going to switch that around to having a cowardly commanding officer, and then our main hero would be the courageous, private, or someone who is lower in rank than our commanding officer who is cowardly, that lower rank person being the courageous one, the overtly courageous one, and seeing what that can do to our story. And I believe that will help me come up with a stronger overall story, and help us have a more sustainable story that goes on for a longer period of time. 90 pages, 120, depends on what you want. But today we are going to be using an exercise from John Truby's The Anatomy of a Story, 22 Steps to Becoming a Master Storyteller. I recommend the book. There are some great concepts in here and some great writing exercises, and we're going to take not an entire writing exercise. We're going to take 3 different elements of this one writing exercise and use it for this video. So our first thing we're going to take is we're going to outline, or this is part of outlining our moral argument within the story. So our first thing is we're going to figure out a moral choice. So this is coming up with the key choice the hero must make near the end of the story. And this will most likely be something courageous for our hero, since that is kind of their strong suit. And then our second thing we're going to figure out today is, for the moral argument, we're going to figure out what our hero's main weakness is when it comes to acting towards others. So that will help us come up with something for our hero to overcome, right? And then our final thing that we're going to figure out today is the drive. So we're going to list the actions our hero will take to win that goal, whatever it is we are going to have them go after during this story. So those are our 3 ideas. The key choice at the end of the story, the main weakness for our hero. When it comes to acting towards others, that's the key thing right there, because we can all have a weakness. We can all just eat too much junk food, right? But that doesn't necessarily affect other people. What we need in a story and what we need for our hero is a weakness that will affect the people around them. So that is the key point in that that idea that we got to figure out. And then listing our actions that the hero will take to achieve the goal, that just helps us come up with kind of a through line for the entirety of the story, to get us from A to B to C, right? But have it be as a result of our character's own activeness within the story, because the last thing you want is a passive main character. So those are going to be the 3 things we're going to come up with, and here we go. With our key choice, that our hero must make at the end of the story, if we have the conflict between a courageous hero and a cowardly uh, commanding officer, then that key choice must be around and rotate and revolve around what does that mean to be a coward and to be a courageous, person. So, in order for that to happen and for it to be interesting, that idea must be also, it must be a choice between two seemingly like bad outcomes, right? For every choice that you put a character through, every single one of the choices should feel like it is a lose-lose, or it is, taking the lesser of two evils. Those are the choices that make for good stories, and those are the choices that that's the choice that we're going to have for our character. Does my main character turn themselves in? Our main character will presumably have a military mission that this unit is going on, and most likely our inciting incident will be this cowardly commanding officer being assigned to this unit, and that mission being assigned to them probably at the same time or around the same time. So the idea would be that kind of your jumping off point, your point of no return, um, if this is a suicide mission, and if your commanding officer, if our commanding officer is a coward, then obviously they will not want to go on said suicide mission. So, what, at least in my mind, what they would do to try to save themselves is make the wrong choice. If this is a pseudo modern story, most likely American military, United States military, then usually we would like to think that they would not send a group of soldiers on a suicide mission. So there would be a some level for success. There would be like a certain percentage for success. It probably won't be high, but it won't be just, guaranteed to die, right? So what our commanding officer would do is they would make the wrong choice, which would for certain lead to the unit's death. And that causes our hero at that point of no return to take into their hands the story. They can either incapacitate the commanding officer and leave them alive, or they could kill the commanding officer and leave them obviously dead, but like get rid of the evidence and kind of give the unit the best chance at survival by our hero now becoming the commanding officer for the mission. And therefore we have like the start of our, second act and into third act, which would be the completing of the mission under the new, more successful idea that our hero would have, but also would lead us up to our point that we're trying to get to, moral choice, and that one choice that they need to make at the end of the story, near the end of the story, which would be, does our hero tell the truth about the death of the commanding officer? And now we move on to our moral weakness. This is the hero's main weakness when it comes to acting towards others. Now, when we have our moral choice, that can kind of help us we can infer what our moral weakness is, but based off of what is the choice that our character has to make towards the end of the story, right? So using our ending to kind of influence where we come from at the beginning, if our character has a genuine issue with his courage being affecting others negatively, how does that manifest at the beginning of our story? So with a character having being courageous, could we possibly use that as a negative thing for those people around him, or her, right? This character, for the most part of this film, will be around his and her, or her, their unit, right? Their military unit is going to be primarily the other characters that they're going to interact with, including the commanding officer at the beginning, right? And then potentially like a military lawyer, or I don't know what they would be called, but whatever Tom Cruise plays in A Few Good Men, that person, right, could come after him for the murder of his commanding officer. Um, so, I mean, weakness would have to deal or could deal potentially with the uh, overabundance of courage with our main character. Now, following that thread, right, we find the little thread on the end of the sweater, and we try to unravel it to figure out what kind of story we're telling, what the story is before we start, with fade in, right? So following that thread and pulling on that, does that allow us to have a character who is kind of too courageous? And maybe their courage is the one that puts them in the position in the first place. It could be a case of the reason why this new commanding officer is coming in is because our hero's courage potentially caused something to happen to the previous commanding officer. Maybe a death, maybe an injury that causes them to no longer be, field worthy. Field worthy? Sure. Field worthy. Battle ready, right? Something like that could happen where that can genuinely negatively affect the unit because guess what? Now we have where we once had a commanding officer who we all respected and who was on our same level as far as us being very patriotic and wanting to do good things for the country, right? Negatively affecting the entire unit is our new commanding officer coming in and being a coward. If you think of, I believe, David Schwimmer's character from Band of Brothers, who was, the characters, their commanding officer during boot camp and during training, and nobody liked him. And then when they got shipped out, they were like glad to be rid of him. And then when he comes back, it was the same thing again. Nobody likes him, right? So there is, you can have that kind of be your character's moral weakness, where their courage has caused and has negatively affected their unit by taking the person who was in charge and who was a good leader for them and replacing them with a terrible leader for them. And that way, you have your character's moral weakness kind of being on another side of the same coin as their strength, right? If you have an overtly courageous person on the battlefield, they're probably going to do well, right? When it comes to a battle or a wartime situation. However, when it comes to maybe something else like the intricacies of managing egos and making sure a team works together very well, that could the overtly courageous archetype might not be so great, because some people can see the merit of a act very well, placed. Hey, maybe our best course of action is retreat here, and then our hero could be on the very opposite side of that and not want to retreat, right? So I think that could be our moral weakness, and I think that's what I'm going to go with for now. None of this is set in stone, so obviously, like, there's probably something better. There's probably something that works better as a moral choice as well. But I think for now, our moral weakness is going to be that idea of, almost being too courageous and taking it to a negative effect when our hero murders their commanding officer because they believe that it is courageous to save their, unit from a, a horrible commanding officer and potentially a fatal mission led by that commanding officer. So that would also affect the other characters, because over the course of your story, now are they implicit in the murder of this commanding officer, right? Um, and that's another moral gray area where they're going to go along with this mission, and there's going to be tension there because, man, at any point this hero, if we say the wrong thing or if we are doing something that they don't agree with, well, we've seen them murder somebody before. That could be, a potential for a pattern forming there, right? So that could introduce some inner unit conflict, but also give us like they have to worry about their own safety when it comes to the law, right? And if they are going to be complicit with this murder. Now we move into our drive, which is the actions our character will take to achieve their goal. So, first goal would be to complete the mission with little to no casualties on the side of the unit. The first action our hero will take in this pursuit of a, completed mission will be to eliminate the commanding officer, who is the biggest threat, at least at the point of no return, to our heroes, because they will have most likely a terrible game plan for this mission, and also just have a lack of experience and like the testicular fortitude to complete this mission while also trying to, keep the unit alive, right? And sometimes, especially military, and we want this to be realistic, they have to make tough decisions. They have to make tough decisions, and that can be very difficult, especially sometimes when you don't have all the information, right? So first major action would be to eliminate the commanding officer, and they will do this through actually killing said commanding officer. Therefore, saving their unit from bad leadership, not only for this mission, but potentially if that commanding officer is now assigned to this unit, potentially for future missions, right? So that would be your first major action. Then it would be to complete that mission with our hero now as the pseudo commanding officer for this unit, and complete that mission with a success, right? And bring people back, right? Obviously, except the commanding officer. But that would be the idea, right? Complete that mission with little to no casualties on our side, and come home safely, right? And then once that would happen, now you have your investigation of, well, what happened to the commanding officer? Why is the bullet wound like this? Why does it feel like it's from one of our weapons? Potentially things like that. And that would cause our hero to really go through it from a very Tom Cruise and the A Few Good Men, right, where he has someone dogging him and hounding him about this mission and what could have happened in order to lead up to this the death of the commanding officer. And now you have conflict there between our hero and the rest of the unit, because now are they implicit in the murder? If they go along with the mission and they were there when the commanding officer died, like, are they implicit? Are they going to go to prison potentially for this murder? And so you have that tension building up, not only between our hero and the law of the military, and the fact that our hero murdered this person is obviously a big no-no within just life in general, right? You don't generally kill people, right? Especially not your commanding officer. And then so not only between our hero and the law, but our hero would take the actions necessary to try to stay out of prison, right? Try to continue to be there for their unit, and thinking that lying is the courageous thing because, well, my unit needs me, and if I'm in prison, then they won't have me. And what if next time they have to make an equally difficult decision and I won't be there to do that for them? So your actions that our character would take would try, first of all, take out the commanding officer because we need to survive this mission. Then second, it would be to finish the mission. And then third kind of major action would be to lie for a good amount of that investigation. And that would build up your conflict. And then finally, your fourth and um, major action would be what we said, the moral choice earlier in the video. They are going to have to take the blame. And it seems like and to them it will feel like a cowardly move because now the unit does not have that person who is strong-willed enough to make that tough decision and make it right, and that therefore they could be, our hero could be condemning the unit or feel like they are condemning the unit to potentially death as a result of our hero not being there. So that will be our four big decisions, right? First, take out your commanding officer. Second, finish the mission, right? And complete it. Then third would be to lie about it until our climax, which would be our fourth and final big decision, which would go back to our moral choice and tell the truth, which is this hero took it upon themselves to murder their commanding officer in order to preserve the lives of their unit. That is going to be our three big elements of this exercise that we are picking and choosing from. Again, this is an exercise that takes 2 pages. We only picked 3 of the list of, I think it was 21, 20, something like that, different questions and individual elements to figure out. So we only took 3. So Truby, don't sue us for that. We only took 3 from this exercise, and those are ones that we thought were important, we thought kind of tied together, and we thought we can, do relatively easy within a video for you guys. So we have our moral choice, deciding to take the blame. We have our moral weakness, being too courageous and having that in excess. And what does that do to someone who is kind of all about that, right? And then your drive, which is your actions. We have our 4 big actions, and then obviously there we will have to pepper in the smaller actions that lead us from big action to big action, but you really need those big blanks to be filled in before you can start connecting those dots. So those are our 3 ideas for those 3 particular elements that we need. Let me know what you thought in the comment section down below and how it would be different for you. How would you handle the conflict between a courageous person who is lower in rank than someone who is a coward and who is in control? How would that conflict play out in your mind? Let me know down below. And then, yeah, check out Truby's book. It's not a bad book. Great concepts in here. I appreciate it for you watching if you've made it this far. And keep writing.